大家好，欢迎收看《天天话题》的法律专栏，我是沈梅琪。今天节目现场请到的嘉宾是华明胜律师事务所的创办人华明胜律师 Scott. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
OK，今天呢，之所以邀请到华明胜律师来上我们的节目，是因为他在上一集的节目里面，他谈到了他为什么要成为一名律师，以及他求学求职的经历。那么今天的节目现场呢，我们要再请华明胜律师跟我们分享他在法律界30年的所见所闻，以及他对目前像是投资移民、EB-5 的欺诈案件，以及最近的联合航空的一些案件呢的看法。所以现在我们就来请教华明胜律师。Scott。From our previous interview, I've learned that why you wanted to be a lawyer and you believe in reach out and help the community. And so I'm wondering, have you ever found yourself torn in between being kind and being right?
Well, you know, there's always a conflict. I understand what you're saying, you know, and sometimes we can't help a person who comes to us for help. And I never feel good when that happens because, you know, we're here for a reason, right? A lawyer has a commitment to help those who need help. But sometimes, for instance, there may be cases that just cannot be won, that if you try to help somebody, nobody's going to be happy with the result. And that's not a good thing to have happen. Sometimes people don't have the money to pay and you can't help them. One thing we do is that we will take pro bono cases. So pro bono means we will help someone who doesn't have the money to pay. We can't do that with every client who comes in, but there are certain cases we will. If we can't do it, there may be other agencies or organizations that can help a person in this situation. But yeah, it is difficult because, you know, if you're sensitive to the needs of a person, the needs of a community, and if you really, you know, respect what you have been trained to do as a lawyer, you want to help them. But unfortunately, it just can't always happen. For instance, right now, there is a lot of notice in the news about EB-5 fraud. Well, we are contacted almost daily by persons who have maybe made investments and the investor is now facing a problem where they may not get a green card, they may not even get their money back. And it's a no-win situation for many of these people because the person committing the fraud may have taken the money and hidden it, may have moved it out of the country. You know, they had a plan, and many times you can't help a person like the investor in this situation.
Yeah, I'm sure facing a situation like that could be pretty tormented for you too. But I understand most lawyers, they are always aiming to land big cases. And however, you think that smaller cases actually impact you in a more positive way?
You know, I judge it by what was the effect or impact on the client or on their family. And many times you see that more clearly in a smaller case than in a bigger case, believe it or not. It may seem small to us, but to a client, something that happened meant a lot. And it doesn't have to be that they made $1 million or something huge happened. It could be we did something to help them that, you know, just had a day-to-day impact on them. And I look at every client as I would my mother or my father or my son or my daughter. You want to help them, and you want to see that they actually were affected positively. And sometimes, you know, the big cases, you don't see it that clearly, actually.
Can you elaborate more on what you mean by that? The small cases actually sometimes have a greater impact on you.
Well, for instance, let's say an immigration client. Their case isn't necessarily a big case, but you may help them reunite their family. And this is not a case that a lawyer would charge a lot of money for, or that the client is going to make any money from, but their family is reunited. You know, I've had cases where I've gone to immigration and I just kind of had this feeling, we can't help this person. Immigration is going to find something wrong, but then it worked out well. And you just feel so proud that here is somebody now, something very meaningful has happened in their life. Perhaps they got a green card. Perhaps they were able to bring over a relative. So these are where I kind of feel the impact more than even some of the larger cases. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as I said, if you look at it, this is like your mother or your father or your son or your daughter. And you don't always get big things for them. Sometimes it's just what happens day to day that is a small thing, but it's the more powerful impact.
And I'm also wondering, how do you represent a client that you know is guilty?
Someone who is guilty, first off, we don't know they're guilty until they've had a trial. So it's very important that they get a fair trial. So I respect very much the criminal law, what we call the criminal law bar, the attorneys that practice criminal law, because they are taking on a commitment to really uphold the Constitution and make sure that a client gets a fair trial, that they are protecting the society as a whole as well, because the purpose of the Constitution is to protect individual citizens from overreaching government action. And we need to make sure that at all points government is kept in check, that it does not do what it is not supposed to do. And without a vigorous, active criminal law bar, you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't know that there are cases where the government does wrong. And we have a saying that is very meaningful to me, that, you know, I'd rather a dozen guilty persons go free than one innocent person be imprisoned. And the only way you have that is when you have a criminal defense bar that does protect society as a whole from overreaching by the government, from wrongful activities by the government. Then you know the system is working, that somebody gets a fair trial. This is very important.
Wrongful activity by the government, do you mean that the American judicial system actually is not perfect? Is that what you're trying to say?
First, it's not perfect. That's very true. It's always a work in process. So the judicial system needs work. But different from that is the government. If you go back to the founding fathers, they came to the U.S. for a reason. They didn't want to be persecuted. They didn't want a government that was going to treat them, not give them their, you know, liberties and freedoms that they felt that all individuals were entitled to. So we don't want the government getting overreaching. We don't want them violating constitutional principles. So that's one thing. Now the judicial system.
Okay, the judicial system, I need you to hold it because we need to take a commercial break.
Okay.
And after a commercial break, you can elaborate more on that part.
Okay.
我们现在要进一下广告，广告回来之后呢，我们会请华明胜律师跟我们多多谈他这个法律界的一些看法。那么广告后见。欢迎回到天天话题的法律节目专栏，我是沈梅琪。现场为您请到的嘉宾是华明胜律师事务所的创办人华明胜律师 Scott。In our previous conversation, you talk about United States judicial system. Do you think it can be improved or can it get worse?
Well, I think it can be improved. I think it works, but it doesn't always work the best that it can, and sometimes it works poorly. And there are different reasons for that. Sometimes it may be the lawyers are not doing a good job, and sometimes it may be that there are outside factors. Maybe government funding is not providing enough to the courts system. For instance, we've had in LA County a problem where, certain courts have had to cut certain hours. So we have more and more cases being filed, but it takes longer and longer to get them from step 1 to step 10. And so there are some things that money can solve. Some things, maybe better training for lawyers could help. Sometimes, there's problems even with the judicial staff, but this is very rare. What I'm mostly concerned about when it comes to the judicial system is how individuals perceive it. So do they think that they're getting a fair day in court when they have to appear in court? Or do they think they're not getting a fair day? Perception is very important. And I think what lawyers know, but not every individual who is not a lawyer knows, is that sometimes you can't get justice in a trial. And that's not even the point of the trial, is necessarily justice. Many times I have people come to me who will phrase it that way: I would like justice. But unfortunately, sometimes you can't give justice. What if you're a victim of a drunk driver? What if that drunk driver hits your car or hits a family member or your friend's car and somebody is seriously injured? There's no real justice you can get. Even somebody going to jail for lifetime does that compensate for the loss that you may have? That's not justice. And as a civil lawyer, as I am, we measure success, and the only way the court measures it, and the judicial system measures it, or our legal system measures it, is by, can you get money from the wrongdoer? That's what we have to seek, is money from the wrongdoer. We cannot put someone in jail. We're civil lawyers. That's the government's job. So somebody comes to me and wants justice, and unfortunately, in many cases, there is no justice.
Law profession taught you to always keep your personal feelings separate from your business. But in this way, I think that to certain cases, you probably have involved your personal feelings for the defendant or the client because you feel bad for their situation.
If you have a passion for what you're doing and you have a passion for your client, then this happens all the time because you you want something very desperately, but you know you can't get it. And you can just do what you can do. For instance, I have a client who came from China 2 years ago on a tour of the United States. And as she was on a tour bus touring through here in the Southern California area, she was involved in a very serious accident in that tour bus. Serious enough that it has prevented her from returning to China. Remember, China is her home. She never intended to come here and live in a hospital or live in a rehabilitation home, but that's what she has been doing for 2 years. How does she support herself? You know, it's something that when you get your ticket in China to the United States and you're looking forward to visiting the country and you end up in a hospital and your children are still in China, what can you do? Or in this case, her young son is still in China. It's very frustrating for me because I know there will never be justice. How can you ever get justice for 2 years separated from your family? 2 years of pain, and you know that will be lifetime now? There's no justice. But we do what we can. So we have arranged for her to live here. She doesn't have to pay for it while this processing of her case goes on. We get her the best treatment, medical treatment, the best treatment you can get. We, you know, have sent her to experts to determine what does this mean for her future economic situation. She could never work again, at least not like she did before. How has this accident changed her future earnings? And the expert will tell us she will have this much in lower earnings during her lifetime than if she had not been in the accident. We'll get all the best treatment for her. We provide that. You know, we become friends.
But did you win the case?
It's still ongoing. So it's not yet completed. I expect that it will be favorable. You know, something like this, we have to have an idea as to what we think is going to be the outcome. You know, we think liability is established. Of course, that's always up to a jury to
But
make
is
that.
winning the top priority for you?
Here we have to do something for her. She's, yes, in this case, we have to get something for her. It's not going to be what you call justice, but we have to, at least under the rules that we can play by, we have to get some money for her.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we have to make her live comfortably in spite of what has happened.
Okay, since we don't have too much time left for this interview, so I have to ask you this question. What's your take on the United Airlines case?
Well, of course, there's two things there. One, of course, is a corporation acting horribly, which is completely unjustified. The second aspect of that is the fact that there was an Asian person involved. And the question and the issue there, what it highlights for me is that we're calling into question how are Asians perceived in the U.S.? How do they perceive themselves even? And how do others in the U.S. perceive Asians? And are they always treated fairly? Are they getting the short end of the stick? Maybe because in a lot of ways they're more passive, and that's not a reason for them to be treated in a way that's not fair. But it's very good that this issue has come out of this particular horrible event, because it does need to be, we all need to look within ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the landmark case can change our lives.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you for coming and talking with us.
Yeah, thank you.
以上就是我对华明胜律师事务所的创办人华明胜律师所做的专访。我们下个礼拜见。
您正在收看的是凤凰卫视。